For the last many weeks, like many parts of the world, India has been under lockdown due to COVID-19. Streets like this one, once bustling with pedestrians, vehicles and hawkers, have been relatively empty during this period. I've been lucky to have access to groceries, medicines, the internet and other essentials. But millions of people across the country are struggling to survive every single day. The pandemic has changed the world as we know it. I'm Sanuta Raghu, coming to you from my neighborhood on the outskirts of Mumbai. For all of us in 2020, COVID-19 is a life-changing event, impacting every system and process on our planet. And there's no single image or visual that can summarize this for the history books. Millions have been left with no proper income on the one hand. On the other, the air has never been cleaner during my lifetime. How has the lockdown changed our habitat? Let's take a closer look.
In March, crowded Mumbai became a ghost city that its residents could never have even dreamed of. India underwent one of the most rigorous lockdowns of the COVID crisis, as 1.3 billion people were placed under curfew with 4 hours' notice. On the surface, it seemed like nature in Indian cities was catching its breath, as roads were almost empty and industries shut down. However, environmentalists say that this is only temporary, and the COVID crisis has exposed some surprising findings.
Now, it is quite clear when there was no transport on the road and industries were shut down, Delhi pollution was still moderate. So this tells us that there is a significant source of natural pollution, natural dust pollution, which is impacting Delhi's air. So if we think that we can meet WHO air quality guideline, air quality standards by just looking at vehicular pollution and industries, we are mistaken. We will have to work a lot on natural regeneration, afforestation, soil conservation, water conservation, actually to improve Delhi's air quality.
The lockdown has been devastating to the Indian economy. Especially hard hit, internal migrants who work in cities and have not been able to return to their village homes. They were seen across urban India, waiting for public transport or just to be given packets of food.
Our job situation is really bad. India's total employment strength is about 400 million people. And the data that is coming out is that about 100 million people are unemployed. That most of this unemployment is in urban poor, people who are serving the service sector, whether in restaurant or malls or cinema halls or transport sector. They are worst hit.
Environmentalists are calling for major changes in current social and environmental policies, where the cracks have been exposed by coronavirus. They are warning against using methods that countries have adopted in the past to kickstart economies.
What governments do after pandemic is to open the economy and increase the growth by any means as much as possible. And the easiest possible means available is exploitation of environment. Climate change is going to hit us very, very hard if we don't reduce our emissions and adapt to the changing climate. And so will happen with respect to water and biodiversity. So the business as usual is no more an option for us. We will have to work towards a green economy.
Chandrabhushan predicts that the Indian economy will go into recession for a long time post the COVID crisis. India must decide how it will emerge after lockdown and how it can continue to grow economically while caring for its environment and all its citizens.
Now, another impact of the lockdown is the difficulty in getting around, especially with public transport being shut or reduced. More and more people in many parts of the world are turning to cycling as a reliable alternative. And governments like Germany's are responding to this spike by opening up emergency bike lanes. The question is, can cycling become integral to urban transport systems?
Public transport during the coronavirus pandemic might not be the best idea. So what is a safe way to get through the city under the current social distancing rules? More and more Berliners are getting on their bikes, and the city has reacted to this new trend by adding cycle lanes. What usually takes years due to administrative procedures is now happening in days. Because amid the pandemic, cyclists need more space on the roads.
Because normally you need to go on the street when there's a lot of cars. Here is very dangerous to not have it. Now I think it's more safe, in my opinion.
There's so much room for my bike now. It ought to be like this everywhere for cyclists.
These provisional bike lanes will be in place for at least a couple of months, according to Felix Weisbrich, head of roads and green spaces in Berlin's Friedrichshain-Kreuzberg district.
These are the old road markings. You can see that the cycle path used to be very narrow. And you can imagine that if a cyclist overtakes someone who's cycling slowly, there won't be 1.5 meters between them. So wider cycling paths are crucial right now.
Road safety activists are calling them pop-up bike lanes. And looking at social media, you can see that they're popping up all over the world. Like in Pasig City in the Philippines. In France, near Paris. In Brussels, Belgium. In the US state of New York. And in Albania, they were built overnight. In Berlin, the new bike lanes used to be parking spaces. A change that isn't making everyone happy.
Where will my customers park now? They come here. I myself park in the back, but we only have 4 or 5 spaces there. It's chaos.
But this is what biking generally looks like in Berlin. Antje Heinrich is part of the Changing Cities initiative, which is campaigning for new traffic policies.
Okay, this is what you mean, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. That happens a lot in Berlin, and it's really dangerous because you have to drive into the car traffic, to drive around the cars who park on the bike lane.
During the coronavirus restrictions, car traffic was reduced by 30%, and public transport recorded up to 80% fewer passengers. Only the number of cyclists went up. Antje hopes the crisis might make the streets more bike and pedestrian friendly.
I imagined all the time how it would be with less cars, like here all the cars parked could be just, we could plant flowers, so put the chairs of the cafes, there could be playgrounds for children, everything.
It might sound like blue sky thinking, but the pandemic is resulting in improvements for cyclists in other German cities and around the world. Vancouver, Budapest, Milan, Mexico City, Bogota and numerous other cities have also introduced short-term street closures and temporary bike lanes.
We might be temporarily grounded for many more weeks or even months to come. But thanks to the internet, we can tour this big, beautiful world from pretty much anywhere without destroying nature or harming the environment with carbon dioxide emissions. Virtual tours can now take you to famous tourist destinations, historic museums, and even introduce you to local people you would rarely get to meet otherwise.
Traveling has become impossible since the world has been grappled by the novel coronavirus. Many countries across the world have closed their borders and have imposed travel restrictions to curb the spread of the deadly virus. Over 2 billion people around the world are currently under lockdown. And it's not just people. roughly 2/3 of the world's passenger jets have been grounded as well, putting an unprecedented strain on the aviation and tourism industry. Now tourism boards across the world are offering virtual tours of their countries for free. You can scroll along the Great Wall of China, explore Machu Picchu, take in the wonder of Petra, or check out Holland's tulips, which are blossoming in all their glory right now. You can virtually visit national parks across the world. From California to Austria. You can look at over 2,500 museums across the globe from your couch. And you can even take a walk on Mars from your living room. The Greek tourism sector now launched its own platform.
Welcome to Greece from Home, a platform where we will have the opportunity to connect with one another.
People can meet locals through their screens.
This is my home. Here is Marley. Say hi, Marley.
They can watch videos of classes online, like singing or painting.
We are practically sharing our love for Greece, showing things that we know that our friends around the world love as well, like food, like music, like wine, just to keep people, happy with having the feeling that they have in Greece. It's not like, like a sales campaign. It is a comfort campaign for that extraordinary period that we are all going through.
Airbnb went one step further and introduced personalized online experiences in early April.
I'm going to be talking to you today about the de-stress techniques. I'm going to be talking to you about my sheep. I'm going to call them in and you'll see them running. Hey there, Steve!
Locals across the world are offering workshops online. Such as learning magic tricks. A Korean makeup tutorial.
Very good coverage. You put it in the eye part, it looks a little brighter.
Or how to cook a traditional Moroccan meal.
Hello, hello.
Bonjour. Bonjour.
The classes and experiences are held via video call and cost between $1 and $50 US. Some experts believe the trend to digitally travel and connect may continue even once corona restrictions have been eased or lifted.
We are going towards this big tower there, then we can explore the city of Prague.
It's expected that tourism will turn more local and digital in the future, which would further hurt the aviation industry, but would also decrease carbon emissions and have a positive impact on the climate.
Virtual travel, at least till we have good haptic support, may not yet replace the experience of sensing a place for what it actually is. So many people I've spoken to, currently bound to their homes, can't wait to get back into nature. In Mumbai, a unique walk for tourists which puts you in touch with how habitats developed around the city's rivers is what awaits you on the other side.
Cities are often built by reclaiming land, dredging soil and driving indigenous people out to make way for development and urban life as we know it. India's bustling financial capital Mumbai is similar. It was once only home to indigenous communities like the Koli fishermen and the Warli tribe. To connect this bridge between the past and the present, two of Mumbai's current residents started an organization called Go Hallu Hallu, that translates as Go Slow. It invites city dwellers to ramp down the pace of their daily lives, reflect and reconnect with the original land the city was built on.
Mumbai Uncensored. There are a lot of, and they show Mumbai in very glamorous way. High-rise building, lot of things. Heritage walks, heritage of Mumbai. And we don't see other side of Mumbai. The other side of Mumbai is beautiful if we see this. Other side of Mumbai is grungy, other side is rusted, other side is very vibrant.
Actually, this river has a bigger tail than, head is also big, but the tail is the most fascinating one. You find lots of wildlife over there. Salsa.
Today's walk is called the Dahisar River Walk. It has degraded in recent years, causing Mumbai to become extremely vulnerable to flooding and waterborne disease. But the Warli community of Naupara that has lived along these banks for generations has a different approach to the river and forest. Many aspects of their traditional ways of life remain intact. Anandibai's house is an embodiment of their philosophy. A decades-old termite mound is safely enclosed within the protective boundary of her brick wall. She has no means of income, and it is the community around her, participants on the heritage walk, that support her. In a frightening trend, the government has now categorized her community as illegal settlers.
They want to now demolish our homes. They don't want a trace of the indigenous people. We didn't even have access to water. I used to carry large pitchers to the river to fetch water every day.
Another member of the community is Dinesh Barap, an artist whose family has lived in Naupara for 7 generations. Through a tribal art form, he tells their stories with natural objects and paint made from stones. Barap gets a share in Go Hallu Hallu's earnings through these walks.
The forest department believes that we are outsiders and they want to relocate us. They plan to build hotels, for example, but they don't know our culture and traditions. They don't want to consider how we tribals live. More than 50% of us cook on the traditional cooking stoves and work outdoors. If they relocate us to an apartment complex, where will we rear our goats? How will we cook the way we are used to? Where will we keep our chickens? It will be a huge problem. Us, Warli people, we can't do without the forest. वारली लोग हैं उनको जंगल ही पसंद है.
Today, members of the Warli community work at the sanctuary as caretakers, guards and gardeners. They have always looked after their forest and lived off its fruits and fish. For a city dweller, these scenes may seem unreal, even though these paras or communities have been living in their backyard.
Is what Aslam saw mentioned in the morning. It's somewhere hitting. Like he mentioned, he never knew this pada. Like after 30 years, he came to know probably that he knows this pada and all. It's really saddening. Like even I didn't know about something like this. And Sanjay Gandhi National Park has been here for years.
The biggest takeaway for me is the sheer interaction that I've had with the beautiful people here. We live in a cocoon. We stay away from the very people we share a city with. So I'm glad I interacted with the Warli people here.
This is called the garvel plant. If you chop a bit of this, grind it and drink its water every day, it is said to help with fever and in controlling diabetes.
We don't
try to preach about it, in the sense about environment and people. Like when you come to this tribal pada, for example, you realize that there is so much of interaction between environment, river, people, and how the community is wedded to the land and to the environment. And that in itself is a lesson. And it's probably through that experience that people like tasting the food here, or drinking the water, or taking a dip in the river. And similarly in other experiences. These are the kind of things that are told only through stories, and no amount of preaching will help.
Go Hallu Hallu charges participants 1,000 rupees for each of their walks. Experiences that strive to break down walls between different communities living within a city, while hoping to encourage a more inclusive and empathetic coexistence.
Now, when we do get the chance to step outside into nature, many of us might look at the trees, plants, birds, animals, and the ocean and call them priceless. It may not be so in the literal sense. Economists are trying to put a price tag on it, not because they want to sell it, but because they want to save it.
What is a tree worth?
City trees help to lower temperatures on hot summer days. People meet at urban parks like this to play sports, go jogging, things like that. These are the benefits people get from city parks.
Bernd Hans-Jürgens is a professor of environmental economics. He calculates the economic value of ecosystem services.
Put simply, services that nature provides for humans are known as ecosystem services. They are utilities. Nature supplies us with wood, water, food. Secondly, it supplies regulatory services. Nature regulates the climate. Trees absorb CO2 from the atmosphere. And beyond that, we have cultural services, places where people can engage in recreation or recuperate. And we have a fourth category, nature's supportive services, like the soil processes that make the ground fertile.
These services are not taken into account politically or economically. Wetlands, for instance, absorb twice as much CO2 as all forests put together, but they are drained and destroyed for farming or construction.
There's also a clear monetary cost. That is, we can very clearly calculate the value of a wetland for storing carbon and for other services. This leads to conservation programs. Private individuals can buy tracts of drained wetland and try to rehydrate them.
Mangroves are another valuable resource. They're important for coastal protection and biodiversity. The losses caused by mangrove destruction by 2050 will amount to more than 1.8 billion euros in value for the ASEAN region.
The mangroves are coastal forests that often grow into the water. They've been largely destroyed in some countries, up to 50 or 60% in Indonesia, for example. In many cases, restoring them is very expensive and laborious. This shows that we often make very short-term economic decisions, but the long-term effects are not given adequate consideration.
Every ecosystem has a function, whether it serves as a protector or food producer. And the impacts aren't only regional, they're also global, marine ecosystems in particular.
The Earth's coral reefs make up perhaps only 1% of the ocean's surface, but they are absolutely vital for the biodiversity of marine life. Values of coral reefs are especially high, up to 1 million euros per square kilometre. About 25% of corals have already been destroyed by coral bleaching. And even if we were to achieve a 2-degree target, this would hardly save the Earth's corals. They face the greatest threat.
Environmental destruction often has no cost for the perpetrators. And even if companies in Europe pay for their CO2 emissions, is that enough?
How do we calculate the damage done by a ton of CO2? For example, should we only calculate the damage for Germany if a ton of CO2 is emitted? Or should we also consider that the South Sea islands are being inundated? You see, working out the social price of carbon is also an ethical question.
Environmental cost calculation can put the environment's real value into a totally new perspective.
That's all we have for you today. I hope you had many takeaways from today's show. We'll see you again next week. Until then, please stay safe and take good care of yourself and your loved ones. Goodbye.